Hey guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Vish and today we're gonna go through my recent reads. It's a new angle. I thought I'd try this out, and also I got my haircut today, so I look extra fresh. Let me know if you like the new angle. I've been trying it out for a couple of weeks in different vlogs, and don't mind the books that are turned away because those are the books that I don't feel like reading, so I don't want them yelling at me to read them. So I've just turned them around in shame. Okay, getting into it. I've managed to rack up 18 books. Whoops. It was initially 16 when I planned this, and then I forgot one book, and then I finished another book yesterday, so I've added that on as well. And as usual, I've categorized them into different categories based on the theme of the book and etc, etc. So let's get into the first category, which is characters that are curious and innocent, and they're just really blunt. So the first book, I actually don't have it with me, but it's All Systems Read by Martha Wells, and this is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries. It is an adult sci-fi novella series, and I gave this 4 stars. So in All Systems Read, we follow this security robot that has hacked its government module, so it's basically sentient. It doesn't have to follow the rules and regulation of the government module, and all it really wants to do is just to sit around and watch TV shows slash serials all day. And it does that to kind of understand humans a bit more and human emotions, which goes into the curiosity category. And in All Systems Read, this Murderbot is assigned to a group of scientists that has gone to this foreign planet to take samples. And in this foreign planet, there's actually a few different teams of scientists, but they haven't met each other. Only one other team has communicated with this current team. And the team that Murderbot is in with realizes that another team across the planet hasn't communicated with them in a while, so they go check out that team and discover that they're all dead. So they need to figure out why and how they died and prevent that from happening to them. So this novella was very short. I also listened to the audiobook along while I was reading, and I also highly recommend the audiobook as well, just because they're all short novellas, so they're all short audiobooks, so you can always read them on the go. I enjoyed this novella just because of the type of perspective this was. We're following Murderbot. They are a robot and they don't really understand human emotions and human behavior. So it's interesting to see everything from its perspective and see what it's thinking. I mean, one of my favorite series is the Side series, and Thunderhead is an AI in this world, and we get to follow its perspective as well as other perspectives as well. So it's interesting to see how their mind works and what they're thinking. So again, with this series, it's kind of the same thing where I'm just fascinated of Murderbot and what it's thinking and what it thinks about humans and how they behave. And I think Murderbot has a great dry sense of humor as well. And I'm definitely going to continue this series just whenever I feel like it, really. But I definitely recommend this series if you're looking for some short novellas, sci-fi novellas to read, and an interesting perspective that you've never really read from before. Definitely recommend this one. The next book in this category is Lotus by Jennifer Hartman. This is a kind of standalone adult romance that I absolutely loved. I gave this 5 stars. No one's surprised. But I think this is one of my favorite romance of the year, if not probably in my top favorites, but definitely for this year. I haven't made up my mind yet, but I really just enjoyed this so much. So we follow 2 characters in this. We follow Sydney and Oliver, and let's start with Oliver. So Oliver has been kidnapped as a child. I think he was 8 years old when he got kidnapped on the 4th of July, and he hasn't been seen for 22 years, and then suddenly he just kind of pops out of nowhere. And Sydney was his best friend as a kid, and she was absolutely devastated when he disappeared, and she's been holding on to him ever since. And obviously there was a lot of emotion when Oliver popped up again, and it's basically their relationship with each other when Oliver comes back. Oliver trying to fit into this world again, into society, and trying to rehabilitate the relationships that he had with Sydney and also his brother Gabe. It's just such a heartfelt, heartwarming story, but with a lot of darkness as well. Obviously, trigger warnings for child kidnapping and child sexual abuse, and also just sexual abuse in general. It is very dark, but the romance in this is so innocent, and I feel like this is the best friends to lovers romance that I've ever read. I was hoping I would get that from People We Meet on Vacation, but alas, no. So if you kind of didn't like People We Meet on Vacation and you're okay with the trigger warnings that I just mentioned, definitely pick this up for sure. And if you've read Jennifer Hartman's other books, definitely pick this one as well. Her writing is phenomenal. This romance is just so sweet. I want to protect Oliver at all costs. There's also a raccoon in this that I absolutely love. I know that seems random, but like when you read it, like you'll know. This is so cute. Also, my nails matches the Lotus, and there's also a couple of twists in here that one I did not see coming and the other one I kind of did when it was going down that road. So it's not just a romance, you know, there's also a mystery to it. Highly recommend this if you have not picked it up. One of my in real life friends has picked it up on a whim because she saw my Instagram story and she absolutely loved it. Like, she was like, I did not expect to cry over a raccoon, but I did. So definitely pick this up, and if you do, please let me know your thoughts. Like, I would love to know. I want to gush about this forever. The last book in this category is The Maid by Nita Prose. So this is an adult thriller mystery that is highly popular in the booktubeverse, and I thought I would pick it up because I was in the mood for a thriller, and boy was I surprised about this. So I gave it 4.25 stars. It wasn't my favorite, but it was very well done because of the choice of narration in this, let's say. So we're following our main character Molly, who is neurodivergent, and it doesn't say specifically what she has, but I'm guessing OCD and autism. But if you know exactly what she has, let me know in the comments down below. So with Molly being neurodivergent, she kind of stands out. In her world, she works as a maid in this fancy hotel, and one day while she's cleaning this suite, she finds a dead body in the suite, and now the police are kind of interrogating her, and she becomes a suspect, and they think that she killed this person. So with Molly being the way she is, that's why I think the narration in this is so unique, because Molly as a character can't grasp social cues and certain human behaviors, or she doesn't really capture when a person is trying to manipulate her and lying to her. So we as a reader can see that that's happening to her, and we know what's going on, but she doesn't because of that. And probably some people wouldn't like that. It would probably make them so frustrated that they just wouldn't read this anymore. But for me, it just made me connect more with Molly and me wanting to protect her at all costs. Same like Oliver. They're just so innocent and curious, and just, they are not embarrassed to be themselves, and I love that. And in terms of the murder mystery plot, I think that was done really well. I was on the edge of my seat for the entire time, and there are certain aspects to it that was predictable, just because again with the choice of narrative in this, we can see certain things that are happening because it's just so blatantly obvious, but not to Molly. So it's just like kind of, I guess, pro and cons, but I just really enjoyed this. I really like the audiobook as well, so I really recommend that audiobook, and it didn't take me long because it's not a very long book, and if you haven't read this, I highly recommend it. Now we move on to the second category, which is the meddlers. So basically people that are meddling in other people's lives. So the first book in this category is The Switch by Beth O'Leary. Can you see that? Oh dear. Apologies for the whole white balance. Let's just do it this way. The Switch by Beth O'Leary. This is a adult contemporary romance. More contemporary and more lit fic than romance, but it's still there. And I gave this 4.5 stars. And I didn't mention before, but All Systems Red was my Greenbone pick for the month of May, and this one was the pick for April. I did exclusive vlogs for both of them. It's on my Patreon if you want to check it out. And since I did a spoiler-free vlog for them, I won't go into it too much other than, like I said, this is more lit fic than romance, and we're following two characters in this, which is Eileen and Lena. And Lena lives in London, and she has recently lost her sister to cancer. And instead of dealing with that grief, she kind of poured herself into work. And one day in work, she had this big presentation that she needed to do, but she kind of bombed it just because she's been overworking herself, and her boss has told her to take 2 months sabbatical and leave. And Eileen is actually Lena's grandmother who lives in Yorkshire, and she has had trouble trying to find a companion. So Eileen and Lena agreed to switch places for 2 months. So Eileen went to London to find a companion, and Lena went to Yorkshire to relax and take over some town things that Eileen had to do, and also reconnect with her mother, because once her sister passed away, her relationship with her mother wasn't so great. And the reason why I categorize this as meddlers is because in Yorkshire, it's a small town, and with small town comes nosy people. So the people in that town just like to butt into each other, and Lena also developed that habit in butting into other people as well, but like for their own good, if you know what I mean. I just thought that this was a really good lit fic with a romance sprinkled in it. I was invested in Lena and Eileen's journey of figuring out themselves and working through their trauma and their pasts and trying to find their purpose again after such a huge grief, because obviously Eileen lost a granddaughter, so she has to work through her grief as well. Overall, I just thought it was a really good book, and I'm definitely going to try her other book, Flatshare, I think. I bought that the other day. So definitely gonna give Flatshare a try, but I think Flatshare is more for romance than lit fic. There is a romance in here. Really liked it. Wish there was more, but that's just me. Next up in this category is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. So Emily Henry has released 3 books so far, including this. Beach Read was a hit. People We Meet on Vacation was not it. But then Book Lovers is a hit. I'm so glad. 2 wins, 1 loss. It's not that bad. So because of that, I was kind of nervous going to this because I didn't know if I was going to like it, if it was going to lean more of Beach Read or People We Meet on Vacation. But I think it leaned towards Beach Read, but not quite so much, because I gave this 4.75 stars. So it wasn't like an absolute favorite, but it was still done really well. So we follow Nora, who is a ruthless literary agent, and she's in the process of trying to find an editor for her client. And she has this meeting with a very sought after editor called Charlie. And in this initial meeting, it didn't go very well. So they parted ways after that. And 2 years later, Nora's sister, Libby, has her 3rd child coming. She convinces Nora to take a break from work and come to the countryside, Sunshine Falls, with her and do some little towny things. So reluctantly, Nora goes with Libby because she wants to repair that relationship that she has with Libby, because she felt Libby kind of floating away, and she just wants to repair that and figure out what's going on with Libby. So they go to Sunshine Falls, and Libby creates a list of things for Nora and her to do while they're in the small town, such as like go skinny dipping in a river or date like a muscled farmer, just different things that you would do in a small town. The thing I really like about this book, there's a lot of tropes that you see in romance novels. They kind of make fun of them because, again, with the list, it's like you go to a small town to do certain things, like save a business, a small business, or like date a farmer, making fun of those tropes, but also kind of doing those tropes at the same time. And the chemistry between Nora and Charlie is so well done. I loved the banter between them. It's just like back and forth so seamlessly. Absolutely loved it. I kind of wish we had 2 perspectives in this instead of just Nora herself. I really wish we had Charlie's perspective in this as well. I think it would have really rounded out the story even more for me, because I love multiple perspectives. And Nora is also going through grief at the moment because her mother died 10 years ago, and she's been dealing with that grief for a long time because she's just poured herself into work because she needed to provide for Libby, because at the time Libby was still a teenager, so she was just working to provide for Libby, and she just hasn't stopped. So the meddler in this is obviously Libby, because she wants Nora to come out of herself again. She created a list so that Nora would do stuff that she wouldn't normally do, and it was really fun seeing it. And because Nora is a literary agent and Charlie is a book editor and they work in publishing houses. Their lives revolve around books, and it's just so nice to see two characters talking about books and their love of books just like we do. So I just really love that. I'll read you one of the quotes that I really like. She said, "I have no life." Nora, he just barely smiles. "You're in books. Of course you don't have a life. None of us do. There's always something too good to read." I mean, hello, it's called Book Lovers. Next book I want to talk about is Dial A with Aunties by Jessie Sutanto. Oh my god. Another 5-star read. This was so fun, so hilarious. Like, oh my god. This made me homesick. For sure. So we follow our main character, Maid, who lives with her mother, and her mother has sisters, like 5 sisters, and all of them are very close because they also have a business together, a wedding business. So Maid takes care of the photography, her mom takes care of the flowers, her big aunt takes care of the baking, blah blah blah. So Maid in college fell in love with this guy, but she was scared to introduce him to her mom and her aunties, so she kind of broke up with him early on. So she has been single ever since, and her mother wants her to get married, as you do as an Indo-Chinese lady. So Maddie's mom, obviously this is what you do, went on a dating website, pretended to be Maddie, and got her a blind date with a rich guy. So Maddie has to go to this blind date, but then she kind of kills him accidentally. So then her mom and her aunties have to try and get rid of the body while a wedding is going on. So it's chaotic. It's fun. I loved it. Again, with the Indo-Chinese heritage, they spoke a lot of Bahasa Indonesia, which is very close to Bahasa Malaysia, which is where I'm from, Malaysia. I understand Bahasa Malaysia. I kind of lost it a little bit, but still I understood it. And it was just so much fun. It reminded me of home. It reminded me of my own grandmother with her sisters. She has 5 sisters. So I just absolutely loved it. I highly recommend the audiobook as well because of the accents and the way they talk. It's kind of hard to read by itself, but with the audiobook, it's so easy to read, and like it brings out the emotions the book can't really convey if you don't have the audiobook. So highly recommend the audiobook. I just picked up the second book, 4 Aunties and a Wedding. I just picked it up yesterday. I am so excited to get to this. I love these characters so much. I think if you liked Finlay Donovan, I think you'll like this. It's kind of like a murder mystery comedy that Finlay Donovan has. I would recommend this over Finlay Donovan for sure. And the last book for this category is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This was my Patreon book club for the month of May and June. Just did a live show with them. It was fun. However, this book was not quite as fun. So sadly, I gave this 2.5 stars. Like, this was just not good for me. Like, the murder mystery part was done so well, but the characters and like the writing style, I was just not here for it. I did not like it. Didn't care about the characters, which I thought I should, because we're following old people at a retirement home that like to meet up on Thursdays to talk about unsolved cases and try to solve them together. And then when a murder pops up in their neighborhood or in their retirement village, they band up together to figure out who murdered this person. And that sounds like an amazing premise. And I thought it would kind of be like, again, like a murder mystery comedy with a lot of chaos in it, but it's not. But I did enjoy the murder mystery, hence why 2.5 stars just for the murder mystery. Let's say the characters were like on par and like I like the writing style, it would have been like a 4.5. But I didn't care about the characters, which is really sad because I thought it would focus more on the characters, but I don't think for me it did. But definitely give it a try because of the murder mystery. I think it's still really well done. I know a lot of people love this. I mean, record-breaking #1 bestseller, it says right on the top. So other people like it. So I definitely recommend that you check it out and see how you feel about it. But for me, it just did not work. So I gave it 2.5 stars. The third category I want to talk about is politics galore, or just there's politics in this books. You know, so let's start with Jade War by Fonda Lee. Let's start with this one. So this is my reread of Jade War. This is my reread of Jade War because I'm trying to get to Jade Legacy, and like, I'm just so scared. A few of my friends recently have read Jade Legacy. They've done vlogs about it. Ro from Wandering Through Worlds and Sid from Sid Bookworm? Yes, Sid Bookworm. They just done Jade Legacy. They just finished Jade Legacy. Oh, Becca from Becca and the Books. They finished Jade Legacy and they were like, I'm dying. I don't want to die. I don't know if I'm emotionally prepared, but like, I've read Jade War. What else is there to do but to read Jade Legacy? But I'm scared. so much. But you know what? I'm gonna have to rip out that band-aid sooner or later, even though that band-aid is like this long. It's gonna hurt so much. Like, I have to do it. Because Jade Legacy was like my anticipated release of 2021, and I still haven't read it. It came out in November last year. I love these characters so much. I have an inkling of what's going to happen, but like, you never know with Fond du Lis. Anyway, I'm rambling. What Jade City, because this is the second book to the Greenbone saga, and Jade City, the first one, we essentially have two clans in this world, the No Peak clan and the Mountain clan. These two clans in the city of Janloon, they control Jade, and Jade is this substance where certain people, greenbones, the Jade allows enhanced perception, enhanced like sight, and enhanced reflexes, stuff like that. So only certain people such as greenbones can use them, and greenbones are in these two clans. But someone has produced this drug called SN1, where if you take this drug, you'll be able to use Jade as well. And with Jade, these two clans are trying to keep them in Janloon because they mean a lot to their culture and they don't want outsiders to use Jade. But with the production of this drug, Jade is kind of being black marketed around the world. So, and it's in very high demand because of that as well. There's just a lot of politics in here about the Jade, about the clan wars, and in Greenbone Saga, we're only following the family of the No Peak clan. I think my one criticism will be that I wish we followed the Mountain clan as well, but like, I love the family of the No Peak clan, the Cowell family. They have my heart and soul. And we follow them and their struggles with the politics and the clan wars and just family drama in of itself. Just so you know, if you haven't picked this up, it's not very fantasy based. The fantasy is essentially the Jade that enhances other people's ability. It's very politics heavy. It's also, there's a lot of family drama as well, which is something that I love. And a lot of people have said that Fond du Lis' writing style is kind of to the point and very factual, so it's kind of hard to connect with the characters. I totally understand that. For me, I actually read Jade City and Jade War back to back, and as I read them slowly, I got to know the characters and I just latched onto them. It took me a while, especially like in Jade War is when I started to get attached. But once I finished Jade War and I like took a seat back, because I finished this in 2020. I took a seat back and I like kept thinking about this series and I kept thinking about these characters and I'm like, holy shit, I'm really attached. It kind of seeps into your soul very, very slowly until it latches on and now you're scared to read the third book. But yeah, this is one of my favorite series of all time, even though I haven't read the third book yet, but I know the third book is going to be a masterpiece. And the next book in this category is Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio. I'm not going to lie, I was in a bit of a fantasy sci-fi like dense book slump when I read this, but I had to read it for a live show and I sped through this with the audiobook. Not gonna lie, I don't remember anything. I remember giving it 4.25 stars. I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed our main character Hadrian. From what I gathered, this series is just basically following Hadrian because at the end of it all, he is the destroyer of the sun. He's called the Sun Eater, hence why it's called the Sun Eater series. He kind of becomes the villain of the story. So we're following him from the beginning to when he becomes that villain. And this is him going from his privileged life and it's just kind of his journey. Like, I'm really sorry, but I can't remember anything about this because I sped through it so much, but I will be rereading this because what I remember is that, and I enjoyed the storytelling of this. I enjoyed the plot. I enjoyed the slowness of it. I enjoyed Hadrian as a character. I wanted more from the story. I wanted to continue on. I actually have the second book on hand. I love the US hardcovers. I love them, but you can't get Empire of Silence as a US hardcover anymore, sadly, unless you pay copious amount of money, which I'm not doing. Maybe I will if it's like one of my favorite series as I read it. I'm sorry. I just don't really remember a lot of it, just that I enjoyed it. And I definitely want to reread it and then move on to the next book because I'm excited to see where it goes. The third and last book in this category is a bit of a weird one, and that is The Beast by Katie Robert. I know, a smut book? What is it doing in politics category? Listen. The Beast is the fourth book in the Wicked Villains series by Katie Robert, and this one follows Belle, Aton, and the Beast. Backstory of these characters. Belle way before her dad died, she was in love with his two generals, the Beast and Gaeton. And they had relationships with her, but she just couldn't decide who she wanted, so she broke up with both of them, and they were both very heartbroken. And I think they stopped being generals for her father, and then her father of old age died, and now she and her sisters have to take over the territory, because once I guess the leader of that territory dies, all the other leaders in the other territories want that territory. There might be a territorial war. How many times will I say territory? So Belle and her sisters have to protect this territory at all costs, and her sister has now tasked Belle to get back the generals, Gaeton and the Beast. They're pissed at her still, and at each other as well. So she has to convince them to come back, but they kind of made a pact, a sexual pact, that they, all three of them, will be together for 2 weeks, and then they'll decide what happens. Stupid. But you know what? It worked. I really liked it. I gave it 4.25 stars. It's not my favorite of the series. My first favorite is still A Worthy Opponent, and that one follows Tink and Hook. This one is definitely my second favorite, just because I truly have never really loved a trio before, but this one I think is my favorite trio. Obviously we have Belle, the Beast, and Gaeton, and this is like truly a love triangle. Full triangle. Love it. Love it so much. I'm just enjoying my time with this series. The next book is The Sea Witch, and that is between Ursula, Ariel, and Eric. So that's gonna be very interesting. Sorry if the angles changed. I needed to change my battery. Okay, let's talk about the fourth category, which is basically main characters that are feisty and like testy. You know, like they're just very sassy, and you step in the wrong direction, they're just going to be like, no. Alright. The first book slash 2 books I want to talk about is Fortuna Sworn and Restless Slumber. So book 1 and book 2 in the Fortuna Sworn series. So I initially had just Fortuna Sworn in this category, but then I finished this yesterday, so I want to talk about them both now. So in Fortuna Sworn, this is an adult dark fantasy romance series that is self-published by KJ Sutton, and this is just so fun, even though it's dark fantasy romance. So we follow our main character Fortuna, whose brother has gone missing for like 2 years now, and she's still searching for him. She hasn't given up hope, and she kind of gets captured by some goblins to be sold at a market, and then this fairy comes up to her and says, I'll, take you to your brother if you marry me. So it's a journey from there, I'll tell you that, because I don't want to tell you anything else. It'll be spoilers. This is kind of an urban fantasy because of the whole fairy thing. You got the Unseelie Court, so you go back and forth between the real world and the Unseelie Court, and I thought I wouldn't enjoy the urban fantasy setting. Like, I don't mind it. I'm just enjoying, like I said, the characters, the plot. I will say, for the second book, I feel like the plot moved too fast, like really, really fast. I thought this one was fast-paced, but no. This one was very fast-paced, and the plot was kind of all over the place. But again, with the characters, because I read them in here and followed them in here, I was just invested in what they were doing and their well-being, for sure. And this one ended in a massive cliffhanger and also took a very dark turn. So I am currently reading the third book, Deadly Dreams. It's in my bedroom, so I'm not gonna get it. But I've jumped straight into Deadly Dreams because I just want to know what happens. So, like, I definitely would recommend this series just because it's a good time. It's a fast read, and if you're just looking, like I said, for a fun time, I would definitely highly recommend these. And the romance in this is very slow burn and also a truly love triangle as well. That's all I'll say. And also I'm on Team College. Also, that's all I'll say. Oh, and I forgot to say, I gave this 3 stars. I gave this 3.5 because I'm more invested in the characters in this. So it's a half star more, but I wasn't a fan of the pace of the plot in here. But then this one, it's kind of like, I like the plot. It was very basic plot, but I was kind of getting to know the characters and everything, so it was okay. Hence the 3 stars. The next book I want to talk about is The Adventure Zone, Murder on the Rockport Limited, Volume 2, basically, of The Adventure Zone. And this is basically a D&D campaign, but in comic book form. And really enjoyed this one. This one is my favorite so far. Like it says, Murder on Rockport Limited. So it's a continuation of the quest in the first book, but it takes place in this train and there's a murder that happened in this train. They have to find out who the murderer is and collect an artifact. That's a whole thing with the first volume. So it's just continuing in the second one, and I'm attached to the characters now. Like I hope they're okay in the next book because it's scary out here, okay? It's scary. I just really enjoy this. I know a lot of people also recommend Critical Role, Vox Machina, I think. I'm not sure. But after I finish this comic book series, I'll definitely check out Critical Role as well, because that's another D&D campaign in like comic book form, and I know there's a show as well, which I will also check out. And I gave this 4 stars. This is the book that I forgot to put on the list, so I think I gave this 4 stars. I just really enjoyed this and the murder mystery plot as well. Like anything with a murder mystery, I'm there. I want to solve it with you. And the next book in the category is Buffy the Vampire Slayer Volume 1 by Joss Whedon, and this is kind of like a spin-off of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV show. This is kind of the modern setting. If you can see, she has a phone there. So it's definitely strays away from the show. But if you can see, like the characters are kind of drawn as the actors of the show, and I really enjoyed this. It's still stuck to the tone and the character relationships that all of them have. So I gave this 4 stars. I definitely want to continue because it's a story of its own. So I definitely want to know more because hello, Buffy's one of my favorite shows of all time. I want to know more in this world. Also, thank you to Becca for gifting me this for Christmas. And the last book in this category I actually don't have with me, but it is Only When It's Us by Chloe Leese. This is the first book in the Bergman Brothers series and is an adult romance that is self-published. And listen to me when I say do not walk, run to read this book. It is also joining my top favorite romances of all time. I love this book so much. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. I'm gonna read everything Chloe Leese has ever written. So we follow 2 characters in this. We have Willa and Ryder. Willa is a soccer star in this university, and Ryder is just a lumberjack lookalike that is deaf, or 3/4 deaf. He had bacterial meningitis a couple of years ago, and because of that infection, he kind of lost all of his hearing in his left ear and some in his right ear. So he can still hear things, but you kind of like have to speak a bit louder, and he has to read lips as well to kind of connect everything together. And the thing I love about Chloe Leese is that each book will have a disability rep. So in this one, Ryder is deaf. And I think the next book, our heroine has rheumatoid arthritis, and yeah, I think Chloe Leese herself is disabled. So I love this book so much. The chemistry between Willa and Ryder is just so good. I love the banter between them and how they one-up each other, and also they both are in very dark places at the moment, and they kind of bring each other up together, and it's a slow burn romance, and that's what I love so much. And Willa is kind of going through a hard time as well because her mother is dying of cancer. I think it's leukemia. She's having a hard time coming to terms that she might lose her mother. So she's going through a hard time. So I feel like there's a bit of a miscommunication trope with this. And if you know me, I hate miscommunication. But this one is more to do with, I don't know you very well and I'm not going to tell you my deep dark secrets. So that makes sense. I just overall really enjoyed the journey that Willa and Ryder has taken together to bring each other up and get to know one another. It's kind of forced proximity as well because they're both in the same class, and Willa being a soccer star, she has to keep up with classes, and Ryder has class notes because he's deaf. He needs to actually read the class notes. So the professor in this class forces Willa to partner up with Ryder for this group project that they have to do. So they get to know each other through that. I just love this. It's a sports romance because Willa is a soccer star and Ryder used to play soccer before his bacterial meningitis infection. So yeah, there's a bit of sports in there, but I just love these 2 characters together. Their chemistry is so good, and I can't wait to read more of Chloe Leese's books. All right. The last category is basically just Throne of Glass. I'm not going to talk too much about Throne of Glass because I feel like everyone knows what Throne of Glass is, and I feel like a lot of people have read Throne of Glass. So I've reread Throne of Glass. I also reread Crown of Midnight, the second book, and the third book, Heir of Fire. This is basically for my patrons. We're doing a mass along where we read Sarah J. Maas's backlist books, and we're starting with Throne of Glass. So we've done Throne of Glass, we've done Crown of Midnight, and we recently just finished Heir of Fire. So this month, July, when I'm filming this, we're gonna read we're gonna read Queen of Shadows and Assassin's Blade. Throne of Glass. I gave Throne of Glass 4.5 stars. I gave Crown of Midnight 4 stars because this is my least favorite of the series, because I just didn't like the plot. I didn't like Kale in this and where he was going. I didn't like Nehemia in this, which is a very unpopular opinion. I just didn't think she was a good friend. I didn't like that. So, but it's kind of like set up for the third book, so I wasn't a huge fan of that, but it was still good. And then we have Heir of Fire, which was 5 stars. This was so good during my reread because Selena is just going through a lot of things right now, and she is on a journey to find herself again. And also we have a new character in this, several new characters in this, whom I love. Manon. Love her. I loved her addition in this book, and like following her and Abraxas, and also again Selena's journey of finding herself again and her powers. The training sequences in this, I love training sequences. It was really good. So I really thoroughly enjoyed my reread of these 3 books. If you want to join the mass along, it's not too late. The link is always down below for you to check out, and we do live shows for every book. Okay, so those are all the books I have to talk about today. There was a lot of books. I have a bit of a sore throat, and it's not going very well. But let me know if you've read any of these books, which ones are your favorite, which ones are not your favorite, and which ones that I like you don't like. If you've made it to the end of this video, please put a raccoon emoji for Lotus. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to. All my social media and Patreon is linked down below if you want to check that out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!